As Kazuya strolled down the street, his gaze fixed on the glowing screen of his phone. His stomach grumbled with hunger, and he was determined to satisfy his craving with a late-night snack. Suddenly, his attention was captured by a commotion erupting from a nearby shop. A wave of panicked customers burst out of the store, causing Kazuya to stumble back. In the chaos, two young girls slammed into him, knocking his phone from his grasp. His eyes widened with terror as he saw a man wielding a gleaming knife emerge from the shop. Kazuya knew he had to act fast. He shouted to the girls to flee, but they remained rooted to the spot, quivering with fear. The attacker raced towards them, his blade glinting in the dim light. Kazuya's heart pounded with fear, but he steeled himself for what he knew he had to do. Summoning all his courage, he lunged at the assailant, grappling with him and bringing him crashing to the ground. Kazuya turned to the girls and urged them to run, but as he did so, his voice trailed off. As Kazuya felt a warm trickle running down his side, he looked down to see blood seeping through his shirt. His attacker, spooked by the sudden turn of events, had fled the scene, leaving Kazuya lying on the ground as the life ebbed from his body. The two girls rushed over to him, tears streaming down their faces as they sobbed in despair. As the sound of approaching sirens grew louder, Kazuya apologized to the girls for causing them such distress. The world around him began to fade as his consciousness slipped away. When he opened his eyes, he was disoriented and confused. The ceiling above him was unfamiliar, and he wondered if he had been taken to a hospital. As he tried to piece together what had happened, he was struck by the luxuriousness of the room he found himself in. It was like nothing he had ever seen before, and he wondered if he had somehow been rewarded for his bravery. As he gazed around the room, his eyes fell upon Sylvia, who rushed over to him with unbridled excitement, calling him Master Kane. Confused, he tried to make sense of what was happening as a woman claiming to be his mother enveloped him in a tight embrace. Feeling overwhelmed, he looked over at the giant mirror next to the bed and saw a face he didn't recognize staring back at him. As Kazuya bolted upright, his heart racing with fear, he looked around the unfamiliar room, his mind racing with questions. Who was he? Where was he? And most importantly, who was that stranger staring back at him from the mirror? The two women rushed to his side, their gentle hands holding him tight, trying to soothe his frenzied mind. But Kazuya couldn't shake the feeling of panic, desperate to understand what was happening to him. As he opened and closed his hands, studying his body, the women's worried faces swam into focus. They asked if he was okay, and Sylvia tried to reassure him, speculating that he was simply confused from his long slumber. Kazuya's mother checked his temperature and suggested he rest a little longer. She ordered some soup for him, hoping to soothe his rumbling stomach. Left alone in the room, Kazuya couldn't help but wonder what was going on. As Kazuya pondered his strange circumstances, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Had he really been reincarnated, just like in the light novels? It seemed impossible, yet there was no denying the unfamiliarity of his surroundings. But as he thought back on the events that had led him here, he found solace in the fact that he had saved those girls from harm. Perhaps this was his chance to make a real difference in the world. Just as he was beginning to explore his new surroundings, Sylvia arrived with a steaming bowl of soup. As he savored the delicious flavors, he felt a warmth spreading through his body, calming his frayed nerves. But his peace was short-lived, as Sylvia gently urged him to lie down and rest. As he struggled against her efforts, he found himself bombarded with answers to his many questions. His new name was Kane von Seaford, and he was only 3 years old. His parents were Garm and Sarah, and he had an older sister named Rain. He was also surprised to learn that his father had 2 wives, giving him 2 half-brothers. His father, a respected nobleman, led an army tasked with safeguarding the borders of the Esfort kingdom against foreign invaders. The nearby forest was home to monstrous creatures, but adventurers kept the threats at bay, and Kane was fascinated by their tales of swords and magic. Excited to wield magic himself, he eagerly asked Sylvia about it, but she reminded him that he needed to learn to read and write first. So he set his sights on studying, determined to master the arts of both words and magic. As Kazuya settled into his new life as Kane, he realized that he had nothing to miss from his previous life. After all, he had lost his last living relative, his grandfather. His young age did not reveal his true intellect, and his family was amazed when they discovered his ability to read, write, and even do math. His mother speculated that he may be a genius in the making. As Kane expressed his gratitude for Sylvia's teaching, her eyes welled up with tears. His father was intrigued by his sudden interest in studying, and even his mother noticed a change in him since he recovered from his fever. Kane explained that he simply wanted to learn more about the world, and his father saw it as a step toward his success in life, despite not being able to inherit the estate. Kane pleaded to read books on magic and the kingdom's history, and his father granted his wish. His mother was thrilled that he showed an interest in magic, but his father reminded him that he would have to wait until he turned 5 to practice magic, after his baptism. However, Kane's thirst for knowledge led him to create fire using magic, surprising even himself. He quickly hid his ability when Sylvia enters his room. Kane is surprised that he can use magic at such a young age. He tries again and accidentally shoots it out of the window. He quickly stops when his sister and maid walk in. Rain notices that he has been studying about the outside world and decides to teach him more. She tells him about the 300-year history of the kingdom and the different races like elves, dwarfs, and beast folk. All of this makes Cain want to explore the world outside. As 2 years flew by, the long-awaited day of Cain's baptism finally arrived. However, the eager boy was running late. Despite that, his tardiness was worth it as his family couldn't help but admire how handsome he looked. As they made their way to the ceremony in a grand carriage, the ordinary folk watched in awe. It was Cain's first time seeing the outside world, and he couldn't help but feel exhilarated. During the ceremony, he asked his sister to show him her magical stats. She revealed that she could wield 3 types of elemental magic. But Cain carefully avoided the part that revealed his sister's affection towards him. Instead, he complimented her impressive stats. Their mother added that Rain had even achieved 2 levels of protection from the god of magic. Cain's father notices that he's confused about magic and protection, so he explains that they come in levels from 1 to 5. The higher the level, the more talent the person has. Cain's mother explains that protection determines how much magic is needed to activate a spell and affects one's skills. Protection is given by a god worshipped in the kingdom, along with 7 other gods. The baptism ritual marks Cain's 5th birthday and informs the gods of his age. The family kneels before the statues of the gods as a sign of respect. Rain wishes that her younger brother receives a lot of protection and magic from the god. The priest starts the ceremony by praying over him and informing the gods that he is of age. He asks for guidance from the gods for Cain. Suddenly, the place becomes bright and Cain hears an old man's laugh. He finds himself in the world of the gods and stands before the 7 deities who call him Kazuya. This surprises him because nobody told him that he would be transported. Cain sees the old man and thinks that he was doing cosplay, but the main god, Zenom, introduces himself and informs Cain that he can hear his thoughts. They ask Rime, the god of death and rebirth, to explain his situation. She reveals that Cain's death was unexpected, and he feels bad because his efforts were not needed. It took a lot of courage for Cain to rush out and help during his previous life. The god of his earth was impressed by his actions and requested the god of death and rebirth to reincarnate him into a new world. However, to prevent him from experiencing mental distress, Rime, the god of death and rebirth, blocked his memories until he was 3 years old. Despite this, Cain was able to quickly regain his memories and develop his writing and magical abilities. As a result, the god of magic granted him protection, and the god of war offered to aid him in swordsmanship and martial arts. The god of technology, the god of commerce, and the god of earth also grant Cain their protection. The god of technology wants him to use his previous knowledge to make progress in this world. The god of commerce allows him to use the judgment and item box skill. The god of earth's perks are unique and will be revealed to Cain later. Cain thanks all the gods for their protection before Zenom sends him back. The priest notices Zenom's brilliance and Cain's father asks him to show his status since he received a lot of protection. Cain looks at his protections and realizes that it might be a problem if he shows them to his family. He pretends to have a stomachache and hides under a shelf to check his status privately. He is surprised by the high numbers and feels relieved that he didn't show them to anyone. He is level 10 for all forms of magic, military and martial arts, and item box skills, and the protection from all the gods is also at level 10. He wonders why the gods gave him such high levels. Zenom allows him to create magic and hints that he should use status conceal. Cain activates it and joins his family for dinner. They toast to his 5th birthday, and his mother comments on the light at the baptism, and his father Garm asked Cain to show his status. The family is amazed by Cain's exceptional abilities, including his high magic score of 344,560, item box skill, and judgment skill. Even though Cain tried to conceal most of his status, his father, Garm, is shocked. He explains that even experienced palace mage only have about 10,000 magic score, and Cain's score is way beyond that at just 5 years old. Garm also mentions that with these skills, Cain is guaranteed success in any job he chooses. However, he warns Cain not to show his status to anyone else as it could be seen as a threat to the kingdom, and one wrong move could result in state supervision. Gar makes the 2 servants promise not to tell anyone about Cain's abilities. After dinner, Cain is left wondering what is considered average stats since his abilities seem exceptional even to his father even after the concealment effect he had put in his stats. As he stumbled upon a book on summoning magic, Cain's eyes lit up with excitement. His heart racing with anticipation, he rushed outside to summon a fluffy creature. But to his dismay, he called forth a demon instead. The creature attacked his sister and her friend, filling Cain with a sense of dread. As he stood frozen, he suddenly got a flashback to the final moments of his previous life. With courage and determination, he leaped into danger once again. He attempted to hit the monster with a fire spell, but the demon seized him and threw him across the yard. His love for his sister and her friend gave him the strength to fight back, and he miraculously sent the monster back to where it came from. As he crashed onto the ground, he lost consciousness. When he woke up, he saw the joy on the faces of the girls. For the first time, people were smiling because of his actions. Later on, he made his debut to a crowd who looked at him in awe. In his speech, Cain revealed his wish to protect everyone by becoming an adventurer. However, Kane's father reminded him that he would have to study and train hard to become a successful adventurer. His dad arranged a tutor to help him become a great adventurer. He was very excited to meet his tutor. While waiting for his tutor, Kane read a book in his room and wondered what he would learn. Would it be fighting skills like an ogre or magical abilities like a witch? Suddenly, the maid told him that his tutor had arrived, interrupting his thoughts. Kane quickly goes to the window to take a closer look at his tutor who has just arrived. He uses a magic spell to meet them. However, he miscalculates and ends up crashing into Millie and Nina. He apologizes and introduces himself to them. The tutors then arrive and come into the house, where Millie seems nervous while introducing herself as an D-rank adventurer, while Nina is very brief. Kane notices that Nina is an elf and becomes fascinated. However, his father reminds them that the tutors are here to teach, so they don't need be shy. Kane then adds that they do not need to be formal when speaking to him. After the introductions, Kane's father Garm leaves his son in the care of 2 tutors for 3 years and they go outside to start the training. The group goes to the practice area where Kane is asked to try a few sword swings so that they can assess his level. Kane takes his stance and starts swinging the sword. Millie is shocked by how refined his skills are, and Nina makes a cheeky comment that the boy might be better than the teacher. This offends Millie, who is certain that she wouldn't lose to a 5-year-old. Since Kane is already beyond beginner level, Millie suggests that they have a mock battle to see how good he really is. Kane agrees, and the mock battle begins. During the battle, the young boy attacks Millie with his sword, and she blocks his strikes, but she was surprised as she can hardly believe that he's only 5 years old. Kane tells her that he recently underwent his baptism. As he constantly attacked Millie with his sword, Nina comments on his impressive skills and asks if he has the protection of the god of war. Kane turns to Nina to confirm her assumption, and he also mentions that his father instructed him not to let anyone outside the family know. Millie can no longer keep up with Kane's swordsmanship, so she instructs him to stop, as she is completely tired and admits that she won't be able to continue at this pace with Kane and suggests that he move on to Nina, who will teach him magic while she takes a break. Nina informs Kane that she has level 3 protection from the god of magic. She asks him if he wants to start with the basics, but Kane tells her that he has already learned them from books. He demonstrates his skills by creating spells like Water Ball and Fireball with ease. Nina is impressed by his proficiency and asks him to demonstrate more. He then uses magic to shoot a couple of rock bullets at the target, but the spell is too powerful, causing the target to break and the wall behind it to shatter. The tutors are shocked as Kane states that he can only do things at the beginner level. For the time being, Nina points out that he used enchanted magic, which is unprecedented because even using shortened forms of incantation requires extensive training. So, for him to be able to use enchanted magic at such a young age, he must be a genius. Not to mention his command of all 4 elements. Nina adds more exposition, pointing out that none of the palace mages of the Sage class can use all of the elements with such power. She asks Kane if he is also protected by the god of magic, which he confirms. Millie thinks that it might be difficult to teach Kane anything more because he seems to have extraordinary abilities. The teachers are even more surprised when he pulls out a towel from his item box. They don't want to be shocked by any more of his abilities or they won't be able to handle it. Millie suggests that they can't continue teaching him inside the castle as his power might destroy the castle. Kane suggests having their lessons outside the wall as he has never been outside before, other than going to his baptism ceremony. This would also be a chance for him to explore the world. The teachers realize that Kane's talent would be better challenged in the real world. They later inform Kane's father that his ability in swordsmanship and magic is beyond beginner level. Kane's teachers were worried that practicing intermediate magic in the mansion might destroy the place. Before they even finish, Kane's father, Graham, understands the situation, saying that he knew this would happen but was not expecting Kane to do it in his first day. He allows them to go outside to practice as long as Kane comes back before sunset. The next day, Kane is excited to go outside for the first time, and they stop a safe distance from the mansion. Nina instructs Kane to cast an intermediate level spell on a boulder, and he chooses fire magic. He casts a firewall spell that explodes the rock and sends his teachers flying. The spell was too powerful for an intermediate level, and Nina points out that Kane must be very talented. Millie thinks that Kane must have used a lot of his magic power to cast the spell. Kane assures his teachers that he's okay despite using a lot of magic. So, they assume that he must have an incredible amount of magic power. Suddenly, they are interrupted by a killer rabbit that attacks them. Millie tries to fight it with her sword, but the rabbit dodges her attack and goes after Kane. He manages to avoid it by using wind magic and kills it with a spell. He decides to put it in his item box to show his family later. Millie is amazed by the item box and shares her desire to own a magic bag, which is similar to the item box but expensive. They explain that the bag is for people who don't have the ability to use an item box. Millie changes the topic and suggests that they do more hunting since they have some time to spare. Nina then uses a search spell to locate some enemies for them to fight. Kane is interested in learning the spell, so Nina explains how it works, and he tries it for the first time. Not only does he successfully use the spell, but he also takes it a step further and can tell the number and types of creatures they will face before they even encounter them. After defeating some of the enemies, some of them manage to escape into the forest. Cain wants to chase after them, but his teachers stop him and explain that it is dangerous to go deeper into the forest. Every few decades, ferocious monsters come charging out from there, trying to destroy the city. That's why the city has such high walls to protect its people. Cain is even more determined to become an adventurer after learning about the city's dangerous monsters. He wants to be able to assist if something similar occurs again. Before going to sleep, he checks his stats and is surprised to see that he's already at level 8, even though he hasn't done much. He thinks it's unfair that the gods made him too strong. The next day, Cain's tutors surprise him by taking him to the guild hall. They want to find contracts for stronger monsters because they believe that Cain is capable of handling them. Hearing about guild hall, Cain gets even more excited and runs after his tutors inside the guild hall. They talk to the receptionist to find a strong monster contract, but a C-class adventurer interrupts them. He makes fun of them for being a low rank and asks if they're doing a babysitting quest with Cain. Hearing this, his friends laugh in the background. He then bullies Millie and orders her to leave Cain and pour him a drink. Millie refuses and tells him to go to a bar. Nina tells him that they are on duty, which makes him angry. He grabs Nina's hand. The two other party members catch Millie. However, Cain is not happy about their behavior, so he grabs the C-rank adventurer's hand and tells him that he's interrupting their training. Despite his teacher's order to run, Cain slaps the bully's hand, which makes him fall down in pain. The man gets up, angry, and tries to attack Cain with his sword. But Cain easily dodges his strikes and demands an apology for his disrespectful behavior towards his tutors. The C-rank then tries to attack with his most powerful move, but Cain grabs his sword with 2 fingers and tosses him out of the guild hall. The other 2 adventurers get scared and hold Millie at knife point, but Cain kicks them out too. His teachers are grateful for his help and Millie compliments him on his martial arts skills. Cain tells her that he learned them from books. They head to the forest where Cain continues his daily training. Cain completed his 3 years of training and Sylvia bring his cloth and news about his teacher, who have declined to increase the duration of the teaching period. Cain understands that his tutors want to go on their own adventures, and he can't tie them down for too long. However, Cain wants to show his appreciation to his tutors, who have been really good to him over the years. He remembers that Millie wanted a red magic bag, so he goes into the forest at night to collect materials from monsters that he can use to make her the bag. Cain also remembers that Nina, his other tutor, wanted a green magic bag. So, he defeats an earth dragon to get the materials he needs for her bag. Cain wants to show his gratitude towards his tutors, and making the magic bags is his way of saying thank you for their help. When a guard at his station notices his attacks from the city wall, he believes it is a monster outbreak. As a result, he sounds the alarm. Calm, he gathers his men and rushes into the forest to stop them, but all they find is a crater and Cain's handkerchief, with no monsters in sight. Cain completes the final stage of his training and is officially graduated. They realize he already knew everything, but it was still nice to teach him. Cain takes advantage of the situation to give them the magical bags he created. When he describes the materials he used to create them, they inform him that even a party of A-class adventurers would have difficulty defeating monsters of that caliber. He tells them that the storage capacity of is not too bad because it can fit the mansion. This astonishes the two, and they inform him that the bags he has created will be considered a national treasure level. If others find out, it may cause them problems. However, he claims that he has added anti-theft technology, so they will be fine. This, however, surprised them even more because it is now more than a national treasure. They willingly accept it. He believes he learns a lot from them, including how much fun adventuring is. They say their goodbyes as they leave. When he returns home, his father criticizes him for his actions in the forest after his banded handkerchief was discovered in the place of the monster. He kept scolding him, telling him he should know his limits because he was only 8 years old. Even after getting good scolding from his father, he still went on an adventure where Cain is fighting against the giant dragon who is much bigger than him. However, with one blow he kills the dragon and the little boy confirms its defeat by tapping its nose with his sword. Feeling proud of his accomplishment, Cain checks his status assuming that his level must have increased. But when the status window appears, he is shocked and his eyes widen. His magic power has increased to an incredible 80 million, and he also got some title like Enemy of All Monster and Dragon Killer, which is expected because he got level 10 protection from all god. To keep himself safe, Cain keeps this information a secret from everyone. When Cain reached the age of 10, he and his family relocated to the capital city, where every noble family's son must go through a debut. Cain is thrilled, but he must wait until he turns 12 before he can attend school. Meanwhile, his older sister Rain is already attending school and is determined to become the top student for her adorable little brother. Cain asks his father when they will arrive at the capital. His father tells him it will take almost a week, and he hopes they won't meet any monsters on the way. He uses a locating spell to check for any warnings ahead. After searching, he becomes worried and informs his father that a dozen monsters are fighting with 10 soldiers 3 miles away. His father is surprised that Kane can use the locating spell from that distance. He orders the guards to hurry because people need their help. However, Kane is concerned that they won't arrive in time to help, so he decides to go alone. But his father objects, saying that a 10-year-old boy can't defeat a dozen monsters. Despite his father's warning, Kane exits the carriage and uses wind magic to boost the speed. The guards are taken aback and mistake him for a bird or an airborne object. Kane's father yells for him to return, but he does not. Meanwhile, Kane's older sister Rain looks on in admiration and wishes him good luck in the fight. The carriage is being attacked by a large army of orcs who have surrounded them. The knights are doing their best to defend the carriage, but they are vastly outnumbered. Kane suddenly enters the battle and begins using his air cutter skill to defeat the monsters. Despite his impressive abilities, the knights are concerned about the young boy's safety and believe he should not be fighting. However, the knights guarding the carriage didn't realize that the young and handsome 10-year-old boy, Kane, was capable of defeating all the monsters on his own. He used his air cutter and air bullet skills to slice up the orcs, leaving only general rank orc. Kane uses fire sword and defeat the orc general easily. The knights were suspicious of Kane and ordered him to approach the carriage carefully, thinking that he might have evil intentions. Kane introduced himself and his guards arrived, but it was unnecessary since Kane had already defeated all the monsters. The knights were amazed that their master had arrived before them, and they watched in disbelief as Kane healed the wounded knight using his magic. Kane advised the knights to eat and rest well to recover from their injuries. However, he couldn't revive the dead ones, so he put their bodies into his item box. At the same time, Kane's father arrives and is surprised to see the dead monsters. He also notices the crest on the carriage and realizes it belongs to the Duke Santana's family. The carriage door opens, and Princess Tech and Princess Silk appear. Kane and his father kneel to show respect. Telstra, one of the princesses, is not feeling well due to stress, tension, and exhaustion caused by the monsters. Kane offers to help by calming her nerves. Within seconds, she feels better and calmer. When she wakes up, Tisha thanks Kane by holding his hand. Silk, her sister, also thanks him by pushing her sister aside. Both sisters are grateful to him for saving their lives and are impressed by his sword skills. They ask him where he's going, and when he says the capital, they invite him to ride in their carriage. Kane tries to call his father for help, but the Duke's daughters take him with them, claiming that they are still scared. Kane's father has no choice but to watch as they take his son away. Kane is forced to sit between the two sisters, and it appears that he is being crushed between them because they are fighting for his attention. Kane tries to take a seat, but the two princesses act like they're scared and won't let him. Instead, they make him call them by their nicknames, Silk and Tisha, with love. Kane, being only 10 years old, is shocked and hesitant to call them that, but he complies anyway, adding Madam and Princess before their names for respect. But they deny that and again says him to call them with name only. As the journey continues, the princesses get closer to him, making Kane feel embarrassed and shy. Luckily, the knight interrupts and informs that they have arrived at Reno. They need to get ready to disembark and rest. Kane is relieved that the attention is off him and focuses on the upcoming stop. Kane is taken aback by the closeness of the princesses and asks the knight if he heard the things that happened in the carriage. To his relief, the knight gives him a positive response that makes him blush. As they reach their place to stay, Kane bids them goodbye in a hurry. However, the girls beg him to stay the night with them, fearing for their safety. His father arrives and reminds them that Kane is only 10 years old, but the girls persist in wanting him to stay, believing that he is the only one powerful enough to protect them from any potential attacks. Finally, his father relents and allows Kane to stay, agreeing with the princesses. Kane is caught off guard by the princesses' insistence that he sleep in the same room as them. Despite feeling uncomfortable, Kane eventually relents and agrees to stay in the same room as the princesses, but only on the condition that their beds are placed at a distance from each other. However, to his surprise, the princesses move their beds closer to his, leaving him feeling trapped in the middle. As a result of the uncomfortable sleeping arrangements, Kane is unable to get a good night's sleep. He wakes up with dark circles under his eyes, feeling exhausted and drained from being constantly jostled by the princesses throughout the night. Nevertheless, he tries to put on a brave face as they arrive at the royal capital. As they exit the carriage, Kane is flanked by the two princesses, who hold onto his arms tightly. They attract the attention of the vice-captain of the Royal Chivalric Order, Dame von Gazard. The knight is impressed by Kane's bravery and the fact that he was able to defeat 50 orcs single-handedly, while also healing the knight wounds. Dame thanks Kane on behalf of all the knights and offers to take over the responsibility of the dead knights that Kane had brought with him. Kane hands over the knights' bodies to Dame and requests that they be given a proper burial. The knight assures Kane that he will take care of everything and that the knights will be honored with a burial befitting their sacrifice. Kane stands before the court with a mix of nerves and excitement. The stares from the courtiers are heavy upon him, but he tries to keep his composure as they talk about his heroic deeds. He had killed the orcs and saved the princesses, and not only that, he had even brought back the corpses of the fallen knights. The room erupts into whispers and murmurs, awed by the bravery of such a young boy. The king himself is impressed by Kane's bravery and recognizes his heroism by bestowing upon him the title of Baron. It is an honor that most men would only dream of receiving, and yet Kane, at the tender age of 10, has achieved it. As the audience hears of Kane's new status, some express their doubts, thinking that it is too much for a boy of his age. One person steps forward to voice his concerns, stating that it is not appropriate to give such a high position to a child who is still learning. The king listens to the objections with a calm demeanor, but he is resolute in his decision. He knows that Kane's bravery and skill are exceptional, and he doesn't want to let such a talented individual go. In response to the objections, the king asks the question that silences the doubters. He asks them if they could do what Kane did, if they could face the orcs and defeat them. The courtiers fall silent, realizing that the answer is no. The man goes back to his seat without any question. The king asks Kane will he accept the rewards or not. Realizing he don't have any option, he agrees. King dismisses the audience and tells Kane to meet him in parlor. In the parlor, Kane's father was surprised that his young son had been given the title of Baron, especially since he was the third son. However, just then, the king arrived with his son and expressed his gratitude to Kane for saving their daughter's life. Kane felt a little embarrassed and told them to raise their heads. He says that he would have helped anyone who was attacked, and Silk's father thanked him as a father. Kane's father then asked why his son had been given the title of Baron since he was still a child. This title was usually given to orphans. However, the king had seen Kane's exceptional power and didn't want to miss out on such a talented individual, so he decided to use this strategy. After everyone had calmed down, the king made another offer to Kane, one that surprised everyone. He asked Kane to get engaged to his daughters. Kane was in shock and didn't know how to respond. It turned out that the king had already discussed how they should deal with Kane. Magnus suggested that Kane's status could be raised to improve his relationship with the royal capital. To strengthen this relationship, they wanted him to get engaged to one of the king's daughters, but both girls were willing to be engaged to him. Therefore, they were pressuring him to get engaged, and he looked at his father for help, but his father just twisted his face as he don't know anything. Alas, he had no choice but to accept their offer. Both girls were happy to hear his approval and remember the night they had spent together. When the king and Eric heard about this, they became angry and Kane had to apologize to them in the following scene. Rain objected to getting engaged to two girls, and Kane's father scolded him because the king had called him a womanizer. Kane felt uneasy and apologized, promising not to do it again. Next day, Kane kneels in prayer to the gods and suddenly finds himself teleported to their realm once again. With the divine beings present, Kane seeks to discuss his status with them. Zenim confirms that Kane is already inhuman and is likely the strongest being in the world. In other words, a demigod, much like the divine creatures themselves. However, Zenim warns Kane to remain cautious despite his immense power. The gods then ask Kane to use his knowledge from his past life to bring entertainment to their world. Kane ponders this for a moment and becomes excited at the prospect of creating something popular. Peenum shares in his excitement, and Kane decides to debut his creation in the city. Meanwhile, Reen is trying on various outfits and showing them off to Kane, but he can't handle the awkwardness any longer and makes a swift exit. As he ran away, Kane's eyes caught sight of a familiar pair of cat ears. He called out to Parma, who beckoned him over. After exchanging pleasantries, Kane explained the purpose of his visit, the debut ceremony. Parma mentioned that she was currently undergoing training at her uncle's workshop, and just as she spoke, her uncle Tamanis arrived on the scene. Tamanis, initially mistaking Kane for a cute boy, quickly apologized upon learning of his noble status. However, Kane didn't take offense and instead asked if he could take a look around the workshop. To his amazement, he found all sorts of wondrous items inside. Then, in a moment of excitement, Kane expressed his desire to create something for entertainment. Tamanis was taken aback, but Kane revealed that he already had an idea in mind and asked Tamanis to handle the production and marketing. As they continued their private conversation, Kane eagerly presented his board game idea to Tamanis, who was thoroughly impressed and immediately saw its potential for success. With excitement in the air, Tamanis agreed to handle the production and marketing of the game, and Kane was overjoyed by his decision. In gratitude, Kane offered Tamanis a gold coin to finance the production of the prototype, but Tamanis refused to accept it. However, after Kane urged him to treat it as an investment, Tamanis eventually relented, confident that his Sarakeen company would make the game a resounding success. After parting ways with Tamanis, Kane returned to find his sister Reen waiting for him, looking angry at his earlier departure. However, Kane quickly diffused the situation by complimenting her on her appearance and calling her cute, causing Reen to become flustered but still eager to show off her latest outfits. Though reluctant at first, Kane eventually agreed to indulge her, and they spent the rest of the night admiring Reen's new wardrobe. As the morning sun rose, Reen reminded Kane of his turn. Suddenly, Sylvia delivered the news that Tamanis was looking for him. Kane met Tamanis, who presented him with the completed prototype. Tamani's enjoyed making it and asked Kane for his thoughts. Kane replied with enthusiasm, saying that it perfectly fits the image of Reversi, much to Tamani's surprise. Excited to try it out, Kane invited Tamani's to play and taught him the rules. Tamani's was impressed with the game and had high hopes for its success. Kane felt embarrassed that he had only copied the game, but Parma and Tamani's were thrilled with the game's possibilities. After their game, Kane instructed Tamani's to make 2 sets of the game, one for nobles with high-quality materials and another for the public at an affordable price. He ordered 50 sets for the nobles and 1,000 sets for the public. However, Tamani's company did not have enough funds for the production cost. Kane presents Tamani's with a generous amount of gold coins, causing the latter to be taken aback. Tamani's then vows once again that they will do their best. Kane tells him to lift his head up. Soon after, Tamani's offers to draw up a contract with the god of commerce in front of the altar. They need to swear an oath, and once done, the product cannot be duplicated anymore. They place their hands under the board, and Tamani's enchants it. The board emits a sparkling light and disappears, signifying that the contract has been made. Kane requests Tamani's to prepare a more luxurious set as he plans to give it to the royal family. Although Tamani's doesn't think he can do it, Kane trusts his skills with the disappearing Reversi. Kane's mind wandered as he imagined the gods themselves playing the game of Reversi. Upon arriving home, Kane was reminded about the upcoming debut ceremony. During the carriage ride, Garm cautioned Kane to be wary of those who would try to arrange a marriage with their daughters, leaving Kane incredulous. Upon arrival, the 3 of them strode towards the entrance and opened it to reveal a gathering of nobles. Kane meandered around and spotted Corino with some children. He passed them by without greeting them, but was relieved to see Garm with Eric and Silk. They exchanged happy waves. As Eric locked eyes with Kane, he flashed a sinister smile that hinted at ulterior motives. However, he quickly switched gears and thanked Kane for saving Silk. Silk then introduced herself with a stunning display of grace and beauty, leaving Kane momentarily stunned. He composed himself and complimented her on her dress and appearance, earning a genuine smile from Silk. But Eric couldn't resist interrupting, teasing Kane about his tendency to compliment girls. Garm explained that it was because of Rain, and they all laughed it off before departing. Kane mused to himself that he treats girls the same way he treats his sister, knowing that compliments make them happy. Suddenly, the sound of trumpets announced the arrival of the king and his family, and they all gathered to listen to his speech. During the king's speech, Kane's attention was drawn to Tellus. After the speech, they had a private meeting with the king. Kane compliments Tellus's beauty with dramatic lines saying that she looks as beautiful as goddess. He was so overcome that he forgot to breathe, which immediately made her blush. The king, however, wasn't pleased with Kane's behavior and complained to Garm about his son being a womanizer. Meanwhile, Tellus was lost in her own thoughts, imagining herself as a beautiful goddess, while the king's smile sent shivers down Kane's spine. Out of nowhere, Kane politely requested permission to access his item box, and with the king's approval, he revealed his latest creation, the Reversi, an exciting entertainment product. The king was intrigued and invited Kane to discuss it further, as well as his interest in Tellus. Garm was taken aback by Kane's involvement in product development, but he acknowledged his understanding of the matter before leaving with Sarah. Just as Kane was about to leave, Silk gracefully emerged and asked for a moment of his time. She expressed her gratitude for his company during Tella's absence. Kane asked Silk to call him by her name, dropping the formality. She agrees but teases him as Baron before calling him by his name repeatedly. As their conversation became more intimate, 3 young nobles interrupted them. The child in the middle introduced himself as Habit and complimented Silk. However, his intentions were to make her cling to him, which Silk responded to coldly. Habit's lackey urged Kane to leave Silk and Habit alone, but Kane politely presented himself as a baron. However, Habit thought that Kane was merely the son of a baron. The other child, who was the son of a viscount, also ordered Kane to address them as master. Habit mocked Kane and demanded an apology, but Silk was unhappy with their attitudes and Kane suggested that Habit should be the one to apologize. This made Habit even more irritated, and he challenged Kane to a fight outside. Kane implored Silk to go back inside, but she surprised him with a sudden hug, causing Habit to become even more agitated. He began to threaten them, but Silk cleverly used the situation to wrap her arms around Kane. As the kid began to cast spells with a strange dance, the clouds grew darker and lightning began to flash. He launched a small fireball, but it missed its mark. The other kid took the book and started to dance as well, casting rock bullets that missed Kane by a wide margin. The clumsy dodges that Kane made only added to the absurdity of the situation. As the group tries to cast magic once again, Silk got angry and told them to stop it, as Silk couldn't resist bragging about how Kane had saved her from the monsters, and introduced Kane in a grand way. The others finally realized who he was, and with Silk's encouragement, they begrudgingly apologized and quickly left. Silk was amused by their reaction, but then she suddenly threatened to tell Tellus about Kane's dark side. Kane didn't want that, so Silk offered to go on a date with him instead. Kane agreed to go on a date with Silk. However, Tellus showed up just as Silk was about to spill the beans. Kane quickly covered her mouth to prevent her from talking, but Tellus saw it as a lewd act and threatened to report them to Duke Eric. She demanded to know their secret, but Kane remained silent. Finally, Silk revealed their plans to go on a date, which made Tellus jealous and angry. She pouted and insisted that she also wanted to go on a date with Kane. Kane couldn't resist the cuteness of her cheeks and agreed to take her out on a date. Unfortunately, their conversation was overheard by the king, and Tellus couldn't resist repeating it, making Kane anxious. The king then summoned him for a private conversation, which made Kane even more nervous. Tellus and Silk, however, clung to him, which only served to infuriate the king. Afterwards, the king decided to enjoy a game of plain reversey. However, Duke Eric brought up the topic of the date, reminding Kane that although the engagement was settled, it was not yet publicly announced. Eric cautioned him to keep it a secret, tapping his shoulder as the king did the same, calling him a dirty little philanderer in a teasing tone. This brings an end to our episode. If you enjoyed it, then don't forget to subscribe our channel, Aniexplainer.